we had bills from Tim Scott and Rand Paul that Democrats in Congress were blocking from going in because they thought it didn't go far enough. But what the hell were the Democrats in the Senate doing?
Part of me wonders if the reason that people stopped talking about the Floyd riots after they stopped, I wonder if I think the left and the media probably breathed a sigh of relief. I mean, how many nights can you stand up in front of a burning building and say, oh, nothing to see here? It's like Leslie Nielsen in The Naked Gun, you know, every fireworks going off in the background and he's standing there saying, nothing to see here, nothing to see. Is that why they got quiet afterward? Were they really secretly glad that the riots they had helped foment were over?
I think so. I think they realized they probably created a beast. I would say the people who were kind of at the top of this kind of realized what might have happened. You kind of saw that with a lot of mayors and stuff. They tried to either at first they were like, we need this to stop, but then they kind of tried to downplay the violence afterwards. I think that was honestly something that was really concerning. And one thing I'll also say too, I'm realizing that my answer to your last question might have not exactly been super clear with that, but I think a big issue is we don't talk about the impact that those riots had on the Black community afterwards. We don't talk about what that did to Black-owned businesses. And what kind of confuses me is there was a lot of fundraising and stuff afterward to help those businesses that were destroyed. But you also had a lot of people who were like, oh, well, these businesses have insurance. We don't need to worry about these sorts of things. And that's same mentality. One thing that changed with 2020, and it's a really concerning development, is the fact that between that and COVID, we haven't learned that people's livelihoods are their lives in a lot of cases. And we saw that with the lockdowns. We saw that with the businesses that were destroyed, where people aren't understanding that the things that people are passionate about, their work, things that they use to feed their families, are an important aspect of their lives. And this is something that this narrative keeps being perpetuated by people who, quite honestly, are in my age group. They're in Olivia's age group too, where we're basically not able to make that connection. I don't know if it's because a lot of people our age aren't working or working to the full extent. They aren't starting families. They aren't doing these things to see the full consequences of what they're putting out there. If anyone was on like any social media platform or had any conversation with these people, they were full on justifying violence and destruction. And at the same time, you ask them, well, what do you want done about it? I asked a few people that. They weren't giving a coherent answer. And I remember I spoke to one girl who was posting all this stuff trying to justify all the violence that was going on. And I had to explain to her that, hey, I want police reform too, but the Democrats are blocking police reform. And I was trying to explain the fact that we had bills from Tim Scott and Rand Paul that Democrats in Congress were blocking from going in because they thought it didn't go far enough. But what the hell were the Democrats in the Senate doing?
Yeah,
they weren't doing anything.
Yeah, and then Rand Paul was ignorantly attacked, and had the authorities not been there, you know, I think he probably would have been actually beaten by a bunch of protesters who had no idea that he was trying to push the police reform that they claim is vital. We're running over time on this topic, but I want to ask Olivia one quick question before we leave. Olivia, why? Cameron made a fantastic point. Is the fact that Democrats seem to care more about the narrative than about the people crushed by these riots and protests whose livelihoods were destroyed? Is that not just endemic of the left in general? They care about ideas. They could not care less about the people those ideas affect.
Yes, definitely, because I remember a lot of these businesses that were affected were actually Black-owned businesses as well. They were rioted on as well. And let's not forget David Dorn, who was attacked. This was a black man who was attacked, and nobody from the left talked about it because he was conservative. And so it's really, really important to remember those names and remember they're always pushing a narrative with whatever they do. And it shows how much little they care about human life.
Yes. And, you know, the thing right now that they originally loved covering AAPI violence against Asians. And then they got shy about it when it turned out a lot of the people committing violence against Asians were black. And now Andy No has posted these unbelievably brutal pictures of himself after he got beat up by one of these crowds. And I've not seen any major, I don't know if Fox has touched it. I haven't seen it there. I've certainly not seen it in any other major news outlets. They do not care about violence. They don't care about individuals. All they care about is the ideology, and the ideology essentially ends with power going to them.